Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you please quickly introduce yourself in the chat window? All of you who are going to be joining online so that I know who all are online right now. We'll just wait for 2 minutes and then we'll immediately start. Keshav. Hi, Keshav. Good evening. So I'm just waiting for another minute or so and then we'll begin. From the GMAT batch? All right. So a lot of what we will be discussing today is common towards all exams, be it CAT, ZAT, GMAT, and any of the other MBA exams. Keshav, is my audio clear? The clarity? Can you just confirm once? The video, the audio, is it clear? Dhruvit. Hi, Dhruvit. Good evening. Clear? All right. Great. Perfect. Okay, I'm just waiting to see who else is going to join. Otherwise, we will begin. Vanshaj. Hi, I hope that was the correct pronunciation. Good evening, Vanshaj. Happy to meet you all. So these are all new people I'm seeing here. I'm just curious, is there anyone to whom I taught VARC or DM for ZAT in CAT 20 for CAT 2025? Not really. I don't think so. I think all of us are meeting for the first time, right? So that would warrant me giving an introduction to all of you since we've never met before. So let me introduce myself formally. My name is Deepshikha Uppal. I am an alum of IIM Ahmedabad. I have done a lot of things in life, which a lot of strings of degrees to my name, which people find confusing. I'm a dentist, I'm a psychologist, I'm also an author. Akarshit. Hi, Akarshit. Nice to meet you. Good evening. And I absolutely love language. Okay, right now, post doing my MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, I am working in the field of marketing and strategy in the pharmaceutical industry. And I love teaching, so that is something I've never given up. So here I am with you, helping you prepare for your VARC for CAT 2026. I am very, very, very excited, and I hope that you are also excited to begin your CAT preparation journey with me. So quickly tell me, how many of you like VARC, are fond of VARC? You feel it's like your strong section? Aditya. Hi Aditya. How many of you love VARC and are confident of scoring well in VARC? And how many of you find it intimidating? How many of you feel a little scared of it? You feel that you're not good at it? Because a lot of time I meet people, a lot of them, especially engineers, and they tell me that they are not very confident of VARC section. Dentist to MBA, why, Vanshaj? Maybe someday over, conversation over coffee, we can have that discussion. Yes, it's very interesting. It's something that people find very curious, about. I'd love to share my story with you, but some other day. Okay, today let's save all our time for something that is going to make you guys better at solving your VARC questions. Gaurav Singhal, hi Gaurav. Sukoon, hi Sukoon. Is it possible to get an IMA with 775? Okay, we'll talk about that, Sukoon. So there is not a clear right or wrong answer to questions like these. There are a lot of variables actually that determine, whether or not you'll be able to get into top tier MBA colleges. But there is no formula. I would tell you, when you start your preparation for your CAT 2026, it's still too early. What you need to focus right now is to do the best preparation, to give your best that you can right now. Don't listen to anyone who would say, no, people from this background, people from that kind of a profile, people with this kind of a skill or that kind of a knowledge base do not have a good chance. Because I broke a lot of stereotypes when I got into IIM Ahmedabad. I completely, and also because I'm a psychologist, I can tell you based on just pure science that stereotype is just, it's people bind you with those stereotypes. So the first thing that you need to do if you really want to succeed in life at CAT and for other things is do not ever let any kind of stereotype or rules bind you down. Okay, there is no rule that cannot be broken. There are no stereotypes that works for everyone. Okay, you are unique. Your profile, your skill, only you know it better than anybody else in the world can. What you can do and what is there in your hand is to give your best, to prepare the best possible way, right? So and we are here to do that. Okay, so right now it's still too early in our journey to be thinking or worrying about whether or not we'll be able to get into a certain college. We will talk about that when the time comes. Okay, so with that, let me quickly start today's class. Okay, so today we are going to be talking. Is this your first VRC class? Just quickly, just tell me, have you guys had any VRC class before? Do you know the structure of how VRC section is that comes in CAT? Are you aware of that? What kind of passages come? And all of those things? Or do you want me to quickly brief you about it? Are you aware of what is tested in VARC? Okay, so very quickly, for those of you who are aware and for those of you who are not aware, so these are a lot of, yes, first for CAT 2026. All right, so there will be a lot of reading and comprehension passages. For VARC, verbal ability and reading comprehension, you will require to do a lot of active reading for a lot of different kinds of passages. Okay, so the first thing that we begin with when we start training ourselves for VARC section is understanding the different kinds of passages that come in CAT, how to tackle each of these types of passages. There's a certain way in which each of these passages are tackled. There is a certain way each of these passages are written. There is a certain tone that the author uses for writing each of these kinds of passages. So there will be scientific passages which are factual in nature, or there would be critical passages, there would be persuasive passages. So the main goal of the author to write these passages for each of these types of passages is very, very, very different, right? For example, for a descriptive passage or a scientific passage, the goal of the author would be to inform you about a certain phenomena or a process, or whatever the topic it is that the author has chosen. He or she wants to explain that topic, explain that process to you. If it's a scientific phenomena, explain the phenomenon to you. Whereas, for example, in persuasive passages, the goal of the author would be completely different. In that case, the author has chosen to write that passage because he or she wants to convince you of his or her point of view. Okay, so depending upon what kind of passage you are reading, there would be a certain writing style that the author would be following. There would be a certain tone. Okay, so what do we exactly mean when we talk about what is the author's tone in the passage? The word tone reflects the emotions of the author. Okay, so what kind of emotions, from what kind of emotional standpoint has the author written this passage? It could be, like in this case that we are going to talk about, a very neutral standpoint where the author does not feel any kind of an extreme positive or negative emotions about the topic at hand. Or many times the author may feel very strongly towards the topic or against the topic that he or she is writing. Okay, so depending upon what kind of passage it is, what was the objective of the author for writing that passage, and what was the tone, the emotion behind which, the author has written this passage. If you are able to understand these three basic core ideas about the passage that you are reading at hand, answering a lot of subjective questions that follow later. For example, what was the main idea of the passage, or what was the author trying to say? Will the author agree to this particular point of view, or will the author not agree to this particular point of view? What kind of this particular, they will give you a sentence and they will ask, will this sentence support the author's argument or weaken the author's main argument? In order to answer all of those subjective questions, it is very important for us to first of all understand what kind of passage it was, the passage that you just now read, what kind of passage it was, what category it belongs to, and what was the emotion behind which the author has written the passage. Okay, so once you understand that the author has written this passage from a very negative standpoint, he doesn't agree, it's a very critical, let's say you realize it's a critical passage where you understood that the author does not agree with what is being said, the topic at hand, and the author is basically pointing out all the weaknesses, all the limitations, all the disadvantages about a certain person, issue, object, thing, phenomenon, etc. So you will be able to understand and answer the subjective questions much better. Okay, how do we understand these nuances? For example, what was the tone that the author used while writing the passage? Many times it is not as clear. The more you practice, the more that you read, the more number of passages of different genres, different kinds you read, the better you will get at quickly understanding intuitively. As soon as you read it, even without conscious thinking, you will understand, okay, this is a descriptive passage, there was a neutral tone to it. Okay, this is a persuasive passage. Persuasive passage in what spectrum? Was the author feeling positively about the topic or a negative emotion about the topic? Even when it comes to positive or negative emotion, was he slightly critical, or he very strongly disapproves of what is being said? Was there humor in it? Was the passage satirically written? Okay, so all of these things you will become better at intuitively grasping. But first we are going to just begin with trying to read and understand consciously and guess what is the tone that the author has read. Okay, written the passage. So the first tone, we are going to classify 7 different tones. You will realize there's a lot of overlap subtle overlaps that happen sometimes. Initially, you may feel confused. Feel free to ask questions, and I will try my best to help you understand and distinguish how different tones differ from each other. And as we go ahead and do some practice questions, and later on when you practice at home, it will become clearer with time. Okay, so let's begin with the first tone. The first tone, and which is the most common tone that you will find in most of the CAT RC questions, and even in GMAT RC passages, is a neutral objective tone. Okay, so what is a neutral objective tone? In a neutral objective tone, the author will present the topic as it is, factually, objectively, without having any emotions involved. No personal opinions of the author, no emotions involved. Okay, it's a very objective, a very factual, descriptive kind of a tone. Like he's just describing, this is how it is happening. So if it's, for example, a scientific RC where a scientific phenomenon is being explained, or let's say it is a descriptive RC where, let's say, for example, if it's an RC where the author is describing a beautiful travel scene, the author has traveled to a beautiful place, let's say in Scotland, and he or she is trying to describe the beautiful scenery in front of him. Now there are different ways in which it can be described. Okay, so in a neutral tone, the author will just tell you what he or she can see. Okay, there are the mountains, this is how it is, that's where in this direction you can see this is how I got here. A lot of travel logs would also use that. Although, mind you, the same can be written with a lot of emotions involved if the author decides to get his or her emotions involved. Okay, so this is where we need to clearly distinguish where a passage is written with a neutral standpoint. The clear question to ask yourself is, do you feel that the author has put his own personal assessment, his own personal opinions, his own personal emotions while describing the topic at hand? Or is it just a very detached, unbiased, objective third person's view of the object at hand? Okay, when I say object at hand, it could be anything. It could be a person, it could be a process, it could be a phenomena, it could be an object, it could be a scenery, whatever is the topic of the passage. Do you feel that the author has put his own personal opinions or his own personal emotions in any way while describing it at all? If the answer is no, then the passage is a neutral passage, a descriptive passage, and the tone that is being used is an objective one. Okay, so for example, there's an example that I provided here. Let's say a study that examines the dietary patterns of urban populations over a 10-year period. Okay, so it's a very factual thing. It's a study that is being described here, a 10-year-old study of urban population, and so it will describe all the different aspects of the study. There is no place here in any way for personal opinions or emotions. Okay, so that is the neutral tone. Okay, clear? So we'll move on to the next one, which is the critical or a disapproving tone. Now, as we keep moving ahead, you will see that the level of personal involvement of the author and the amount of emotions that creep into the passage writing is going to increase. We started with neutral, where there was absolutely no emotion involved. Okay, absolutely objective, unbiased, a very detached, it could opinion of something. It could have been written by anyone. A neutral tone means, ideally it should mean, if you wrote about the same topic and if I wrote about the same topic, somewhat our passage should be similar because the topic at hand is the same and there is no personal opinion that was added to it, right? It's a very scientific way of writing about something, a very objective way. Let's move to the next level where a little bit of emotions get involved. Now this is critical or a disapproving tone. So here the emotions are getting involved on the negative side. Okay, so in critical passages where a disapproving tone would be used, the author would highlight the certain flaws, limitations or weaknesses of the topic at hand, however in a limited fashion. Okay, so it will not be like there is a lot of hatred that the author has towards it, like he is filled of resentment or anger. There is no angry rant ki this is so bad, but still the author in a very controlled mannerism would highlight the limitations and weaknesses of a certain topic. So the disadvantages are being highlighted, but not in a very extreme emotional way. Why am I highlighting this but not part? Because there is another tone that is, you know, on a little more extreme than critical and disapproving. Okay, so we will come to that. So the amount of disapproval and in what kind of quantity the emotions, the negative emotions have crept in, and the author has, how strong a stance the author has taken about his personal views, will determine whether it is slightly critical and slightly disapproving or extreme one, okay, which we will talk about later. So in critical tone, there is a slight bit of disapproval that you will see, but it is not like the author is very hates it, or it's not like an endless angry rant that, this person should not exist, this should have, very extreme, like there is no way that this person is good. Okay, it's just that, in critical you will see somewhere they might talk about certain good things, but then immediately they'll rebut and refute it by saying, but you know what, this is there are a lot of bad things about it. So you will get the idea. Okay, the author subtly is not very happy with the topic at hand, with the person at hand, with the phenomenon at hand, and he again and again keeps coming back to highlighting what are the weaknesses behind it. Okay, so that is a critical or a disapproving tone. Let's move on to the next one. Skeptical, doubtful. Okay, so here what's the difference between critical, disapproving tone and skeptical? So skeptical is doubtful, where he will so whenever you feel whenever you have some keywords or phrases, if you notice, where the author is again and again trying to question, are we sure this is the right thing to do, are we sure this is a good way to proceed, so again and again when the doubt creeps in, where the author will keep coming back to, so he will not say that he doesn't like the topic at hand, whether it's the process, a rule, a social phenomena, a person, or whatever. He will not outrightly say that this is wrong. The manner in which he will keep questioning and he will keep highlighting the limitation, it will keep circling back to the doubtful conclusion that, are we sure that this is the right direction, or this is the right thing to do, or this is the right conclusion? The doubt factor will be very clearly highlighted. So it's not just plain criticism that this is not right, or there is a big limitation to this phenomenon. There will be a lot of doubt expressed in different ways again and again, that are we sure, is this the right thing? So this conflict is again and again brought out into the passage, where the author keeps questioning, is it good or is it bad, we are not sure. Okay, so this doubt, when you see in the author's point of view, you will clearly know that the author is being skeptical or being doubtful. So that is the third tone that we need to look out for. So these were on the negative side of the scale. Let's move on to the positive side. Okay, so just like critical or a disapproving was, the author is not liking, is not approving of the topic at hand, but in a limited fashion. Supportive is the opposite of that. Supportive means the author very much agrees with the topic at hand. He likes it. He is in favor of it. Okay. So how will you know that the author is in favor of it? He will keep highlighting the good points, the good, the advantages of the main, the main object about which the passage has been written. Okay. So in a neutral tone, in a neutral passage, the good and the bad are both equally pointed out in a very objective fashion. Okay, if the author disapproves of the subject at hand, he will disproportionately keep pointing out the limitations and the weaknesses. If the author supports or advocates about the main idea, the main topic that he is writing the passage about, he will, in an unnatural fashion, you will see the passage will be framed in such a way, the passage will be written in such a way that he or she will keep praising the topic at hand. They will keep highlighting what is good about it. They will not talk so much about the limitations and the disadvantages. They will keep talking a lot about how it supports XYZ, how it is good for society or humanity, or what is good about it. Okay, so the positive side of it you will see is being highlighted more clearly. The author is supportive and the tone of the passage is supportive. Okay, so supportive and disapproving are two, 180 degrees. They are when you read them, it's very, very, very evident. And if both of them are equally present, then of course it is neutral. Okay, evaluative. Again, evaluative and analytical, these are similar. So this is again a more objective one. So when I said that you would know when the author is being supportive or disapproving, how will you know that? Because unnaturally you will see when the author is supportive, he is going to keep highlighting the positives about the topic. If he is disapproving, he will keep highlighting the limitations or the weaknesses. Okay, now evaluative or analytical is a way more comprehensive and a way more scientific method of presenting a topic, where you will highlight both sides equally. You will highlight all the advantages and you will highlight all the disadvantages. Okay, you will highlight all the good things that you feel about it, and you will highlight all the bad things also that you feel about the topic equally. Okay, so वो तराजू पे आप ऐसे रख के जब सोचोगे ना, so in supportive you will be able to clearly see कि there are more positives being told than the negative. Disapproving में you will see that clearly the negatives are being highlighted more. But in an analytical or an evaluative one, you will be able to see that there are a lot of positives being pointed out. At the same time, there are a lot of negatives also being pointed out in a very balanced fashion. Okay, so clearly the author is on, it's not कि he is on any one side or the other. The job of the author in such kind of passages is basically to give you a complete, comprehensive 360-degree holistic understanding of the topic at hand, and he is leaving it at you. Tum decide karo what you feel about the topic. I have told you everything about it. All the positive impacts it can have, all the negative impacts it can have. It's like, a very good reporter. Telling you everything about the situation, all possible aspects, every possible impact, and you decide what you feel about it. Okay, so analytical or evaluative, everything will be given. Okay, so the comparison between this happens, but that also happens. So what are the keywords? Again and again the positives will be highlighted, and then you can see certain keywords like on one hand, but on the other hand, nevertheless this happens, and all of that. While this happens, that also happens, to balance out, pointing out the positives with pointing out the negatives. Gaurav is asking critical and skeptical ka mix kya hai, ma'am? So critical and skeptical, let me go back to it. There is no mix of critical or skeptical. Skeptical is doubtful and critical is disapproving. Okay, दोनों मैंने बोला. At first, maybe you will find it a little difficult to distinguish between the two. Definitely, there are times when there is overlap, but there are subtle differences and subtle giveaways, Gaurav. Okay, so in both, clearly the author is not very convinced about the topic that which he is writing, that it is good. But if it is a disapproving tone, again and again, he will keep highlighting that this is not good. The government fails to do this. The government has fallen. Let's say the author is writing about some policy that was some government policy that he is not very happy about. The policy has failed to achieve this. The government has let us down. All of those things, they'll in different ways, they'll keep on explaining why it has happened. Okay. This is the way in which he would write if he wants to use a disapproving tone, that the policy, he does not agree with it, that this is not good, that this is what it is doing, it's failing to uplift the weaker members of the society, it does not do anything for the minority. But if it was a skeptical tone, how would he write about it? He would write, I wonder if the policy is doing what it was meant to do. That would be the tone, where he is raising a doubt, a question on, is the policy, is it really working? I am not sure that the policy is working. I am not sure what the government had in mind when they were doing that. Do you see the subtle difference in which the sentences could be framed to go from a very clearly critical or a disapproving tone to a little bit of a doubtful tone? Okay, it's a subtle difference, but you have to pick that up. So is the author expressing doubt, or is he clearly disapproving and already giving you the verdict that no, this is not good and I do not agree with it? Okay. Analytical is not opinionated. No, analytical is not opinionated. So basically, what is the difference between neutral and analytical? In neutral, there are no emotions involved at all. Okay, so neutral is like when you are, again, I told you, like describing, let's say the best example that I can give you is a scientific phenomenon. Okay, why does lightning happen or the rainbow occur in the sky? The tone that the author would take would be a neutral tone. Okay, there is no scope of any emotions being involved. But in analytical, there could be emotions involved. There could be author's personal opinions involved. He could tell you what he feels, but he will do that in a more balanced way. The author, he or she, would tell you the positives as well as the negatives. Okay, so personal opinions can be added in analytical passages, but they will be done in such a way that both sides, positives and negatives, will be balanced when they are pointing it out. Okay, so opinions can be given in author's own analysis, because the author, we will presume, is an expert in this matter. That is why he or she is writing the passage. So he must be knowing a lot on this matter. So the author may try to explain to you the advantages and the disadvantages, the limitations, and what is good about it from his or her point of view, based on his or her understanding. But when you read the passage, you will realize that वो तराजू किसी एक तरफ नहीं झुक रहा है. The author has tried to do a good job at pointing out both sides equally. You will not see कि disproportionately सिर्फ advantages या disproportionately सिर्फ disadvantages highlight हो रहे हैं. Positive या negative कोई एक emotion disproportionately नहीं present होगा. दोनों के sides balanced way में present होंगे. Okay? Okay. Supportive हो गया, evaluative हो गया. Next is a cautious or a reserved tone. Okay, so this is the opposite side of, so I told you na, जैसे ये था, which was the one, हाँ, disapproving. So disapproving में था या कि slightly disapprove करता है. तो here the author will show approval, but in a very reserved fashion. Like, he is not going all out and saying ये बहुत अच्छा है, this is perfect, this is great, and I really think this is a good idea. He may say that it is good, it is okay, but in a very subtle and reserved fashion. Like, on a scale of 1 to 10, अगर कोई तुमसे पूछे how good do you think it is, तुम 5 से बस थोड़ा सा आगे हो, you are at 6. Okay, so you approve of it, but you're not like, oh my god, I'm in love with this topic, or I think this is the best idea in the world. You think it's okay, but you barely have reached to that conclusion. You still may be having some doubts, but overall your sentiment about the topic is still positive, not negative. Okay, so you're optimistic about it, but still in a very reserved and restrained kind of a way. So you're uncertain. So in some ways it is very similar to the doubtful tone that we talked about, but doubtful tone में क्या है? Doubtful tone में the author is not convinced about the topic. Okay, he is on the negative side of the emotion. The author does not like the topic and he is doubtful. Here the author likes the topic, but he is doubtful, as in he doesn't like it too much also. Do you see how it is exactly on the other side? So he is feeling positive about the topic, but not extremely positive also. So you will see again and again the kind of words, the kind of adjectives, the manner in which he is going to show his approval about the topic are going to be very reserved. The vocabulary that he will use to convey to you that maybe this may be a good policy, or this is a good person, or the phenomena, or this idea, or this, let's say, social movement was a good one. The language that he will use, you will see, is a little reserved, a little restrained. Okay, because he's aware that there are limitations also. Overall, his analysis is overall it is good, but because of the limitations and the other things, he is not that sure about it, that optimistic about it too. Okay, so cautious, reserved, that is another tone. And the last one is very interesting. It's not very common in CAT RC passages, of course, but it's very important that you pick up on it, and that is satire. Okay, so sarcastic or an ironic tone. So what is sarcasm? Sarcasm is when the author is saying one thing but he means something else. Okay, so the best example that I can think of is, I don't know, if your mother is ever very angry, okay, and you ask her that, what happened, mama, are you angry with me? And she looks at you with that, very sour expression. He says, nahi, main to bahut khush hu tumse. Okay, so what are the exact literal words that she's saying to you? Nahi, main to bahut khush hu tumse. Okay, so she's saying that, but the manner in which she says, the tone, the context in which she's saying, because this would be a personal conversation, her expressions and a lot of non-verbal cues would actually tell you that what she means is the complete opposite of that. Okay, so similarly, just like in verbal communication, sarcasm you will have to identify in written passages also. So when the author is saying, you know what, I'm very happy to say that the government did a great job these last 6 months at helping the poor. The number of people under the poverty scale has risen, and our country could never have done any better. So look at the words that are being used. The words that are being used would be positive, but you have to pick up that between the lines, the sentiments that the author has is basically he's not very happy. What he's trying to actually say is that the government has done a lousy job. Okay, so sarcastic tone is another tone that you will have to pick up. It's easy to pick up. Okay, it's easy to pick up. The contrast is very clear most of the times, which is why CAT does not use it. But if it is a sarcastic RC, if it is a sarcastic tone and you have not picked it up, it would lead to a big mistake in attempting all questions of that RC. Okay, so it is very important for you to pick up when the author is using sarcasm in his passage. Okay, so with that, these were the 7 tones. What we are going to do now is, so this was just the theoretical part. Okay, so none of that is going to help you unless you practice a lot of questions, and all of this needs to come to you intuitively. Okay, you shouldn't have to think that, okay, wait, was the author telling only positives, was he telling only negatives, how strong were his positive or negative emotions, ye analytical hai ki neutral hai, disapproving tone tha ki sarcastic tone tha ki supportive tone tha. These are the things, as soon as you are reading, should intuitively occur to you. Okay, and that will only come with practice. So let's begin. What we are going to do is, I am going to make this video frame smaller. I'm going to give you some time. I want you to read the passage and quickly choose what kind of tone best describes it. Okay. Okay. Okay, let's do one thing. Cautious is saying cautiously supportive. Okay, let's not put the answers here. I feel, it psychologically impacts other people's choice of the answer. So just write it down in your notebook somewhere or keep it in your head. Which option have you chosen? And then when we are discussing it, then you see if it was correct, what you chose. Okay, is everyone done or do you need more time? Later on, I'll be giving you timed, I'll time it like 3 minutes for the paragraph or 5 minutes for the RC. Right now, because we're just starting, I don't want to hurry you guys. So I'm giving you more time because right now we should focus more on the basics. But we will have to increase our reading and processing speed as we go along. Done? Okay. Okay, let's try and see what this passage is talking about. Okay. Over the last 2 decades, urban planning discourse has increasingly emphasized the role of mixed-use development in shaping sustainable cities. So what is the author saying here? That for the past 20 years, urban planners have been talking more and more about mixed-use development. What is mixed-use development? Basically, places that combine housing, office, shops, etc. as an important way to build cities that last and function well. Okay. Proponents argue that integrating residential, commercial, and recreational spaces within the close proximity can reduce reliance on private transportation and encourage more efficient land use. So the supporters believe that when people live and work and relax close to each other, they do not need cars as much, and the land also gets used more efficiently. One second, now. Sorry, some technical glitch from my end. Just give me a moment. Yeah, okay. So here the author is giving you an argument in favor of mixed use development. Okay, so that people can, when everything is close by, then people will not need cars that much and the land also gets used more efficiently. Now, research done in different cities shows that these areas usually have shorter travel times and more people walking, which I guess is even healthier for them, right? So basically here the author is giving you argument in support of why it's a good thing, why that has come into practice, mixed development. Okay. At the same time, the outcomes of mixed use planning appear to be influenced by contextual variables, including population density, existing infrastructure, and regulatory frameworks. Okay, so author first began with telling you what is good about the mixed development. Why did this concept come into being? What is good about it? Now he's following up by telling you what is he's balancing it out. He's telling you now what is the problem with it. Okay, the problem with it is that it depends upon a lot of different other variables. For example, how crowded the area is, how good the infrastructure is, how good the government is. Okay, so it's not like, so what did he just do? He told you the positive and then he told you a limitation of it also. Okay, let's see what does he say again. In cities with robust public transport networks, mixed use zone tends to complement mobility systems effectively. Okay, so in cities where public transportation is strong, mixed use areas, they work very well with those transport systems. But what is the author then again saying? But in cities without good transport system, the mixed use development can actually make traffic worse instead of better. So do you see what the author is doing here? He's telling you the good part and then he's following it immediately with a limitation. He's telling you why mixed use development is good, then he told you the limitation. Okay, he told you in what kind of cities it works and it's a very good idea, and then he also tells you in what kind of cities actually it is going to make it worse. Okay, so continuously I see that the author is playing a balancing game here. He's telling you the positive and he's telling you the negative. Basically, he's telling you about mixed development in general. Okay, abhi tak I don't see any strong emotions being involved anywhere. Okay, I do not see any emotionally charged language being used. Additionally, so I see a very neutral tone being used where someone is describing a phenomena called mixed development, what it means, where it works, where it doesn't work, what can happen if transportation and infrastructure is good, what can happen if transportation and infrastructure is not good. It almost looks to me like somebody is writing a report on what is mixed use development. Okay, so I do not see author's personal opinions or emotions involved at any point up till now. Okay, additionally, housing affordability within mixed use development varies considerably, often reflecting broader market dynamics rather than planning principles alone. So housing prices in these areas, they differ a lot, and this usually depends more on how the real estate market is than on urban planning. What are long-term studies showing? The long-term studies are trying to show how this affects society over a long period of time, such as how different people will interact and how diverse communities are economically. Okay, so the author is saying that while some data suggest modest increase in local engagement, other studies find no statistically significant change when compared to traditional zoning models. So here again they are reporting, what do the studies tell you about this mixed development? Again, he's giving a very balanced perspective. He's saying that some research shows that there is a small improvement, but other research finds no meaningful difference compared to the other designs. Okay. So, so basically, I'm going to stop here. Just based on this, as I can see, how many of you wrote it as a neutral tone? Because the correct answer is a neutral tone. Okay, so the author here is taking a neutral tone. Okay, why it is not an analytical tone? Analytical tone requires a weighing of pros and cons with a proper structure. Okay, so this is there but this is not there, and there has to be authors some kind of personal. So what did I tell you? What is the difference between neutral and analytical? In neutral, there would be no personal opinion, judgment. Okay, Abhishek sir's answer does not count. Okay, how many of the students got it right? Okay, so the difference between a neutral and analytical one is, in analytical one, okay, the pros and cons will both be given, but there will be some degree, some level of author's personal involvement. Okay, so you will see that there is a lot of judgment being passed based on author's personal knowledge, opinion, emotion, but it will be just done in a very balanced manner. Okay, whereas a neutral RC will just have factual, fact stating that this is what it is, like a report, as I told you. So if you look at this passage almost feels like somebody has written a report. कैसे स्कूल किसी बच्चे को जैसे स्कूल के या कॉलेज में ना मिक्स्ड डेवलपमेंट के ऊपर अगर रिपोर्ट लिखनी होगी, एक साइंटिफिक एक ऑब्जेक्टिव रिपोर्ट, ऑब्जेक्टिवली एवरीथिंग एवरी एस्पेक्ट related to mixed use development has been pointed here. Author has not added any पर्सनल एलिमेंट इनटू इट. ऑथर का कोई इन्वॉल्वमेंट है ही नहीं, तो वो एनालिटिकल नहीं है. ऑथर ने यहाँ पे कोई एनालिसिस नहीं किया, यहाँ पे बस फैक्ट स्टेट किए हैं इन अ वेरी बैलेंस्ड वे. It's not कि advantages have been highlighted more than disadvantages or vice versa. Okay, hence this is neutral and not analytical. It is not cautiously supportive, if you will see, or nor is it mildly critical. Okay, if you will see, the author is nowhere highlighting advantages more than disadvantages and limitations. Okay, supportive and critical mein na, you will also see a lot of adjectives and a lot of phrases being used which are very clearly indicative of positive or negative emotions that the author feels, opinions that the author has. Okay, so nowhere does it say this is great, this is amazing, or in any way. The author has not passed any judgment. Only he has, or he or she has not told you whether it is good or bad. He is just stating what it is, where it works, where it doesn't, what does the study say, everything in a very balanced way. Okay, so that was the first one, a neutral tone. Let's quickly go on to the next passage. Do not write the answer here. Just write done once you are done. So I'll know that everybody is done with it and we can start discussing it. Gaurav is done. Okay. We'll just wait for others also to finish. Akarshit is done. Vanshaj done. Keshav, Sachin, let me know once you're done. Okay, so let's see what this uh, paragraph is talking about. This is about standardized testing. Okay, so what is the author saying here? The author is saying that standardized tests are widely used to judge how good the education systems are, mainly because why? They allow comparison, easy comparison, and make institutions answerable. By offering quantifiable benchmarks such assessments are believed to enable policymakers to identify gaps in learning outcomes and allocate resources more efficiently. So what is the author saying? He's telling you why these standardized systems, testing systems exist, because test scores give numerical data. Because they give numerical data, policymakers think that it will help find weak areas and help them distribute the resources better. So in theory, standardized metrics provide an objective basis for evaluating institutional performance. Okay, so the author begins with telling you why standardized metrics exist, what is good about it, what do, at least in theory, what do authorities believe that they will do. Okay. However, this emphasis on uniform measurement often obscures the diversity of learning context in which students operate. Okay, so starting from here, the author is telling you, okay, this is the reason why it exists or why people thought of it, but focusing too much on uniform tests, it shies away from the facts that students learn in a very different environment. Different students learn in different contexts, different environment, in different ways. Okay, socioeconomic disparities, linguistic backgrounds, and access to educational support significantly influence test performance, yet these factors are rarely incorporated into evaluative frameworks. Okay, so what the author is doing, he is highlighting some structural unfairness that occurs in standardized testing. So different income levels, different social and language backgrounds, how much of social support system is available to them, all of this the author is saying is going to impact the test performance of students, but none of this is incorporated into the measurement aspect of it. Okay, so what is the author saying? As a result, the test scores may reflect structural inequalities as much as instructional ineffectiveness. Okay, so the test results, they show social inequality, not just how good teaching actually is. Okay, so clearly here the author is critiquing that the scores that you get on these standardized tests, they do not purely measure learning, because the result of these tests are actually also dependent upon so many different other variables which we do not even account for in these tests. Okay, so how can the scores just tell you that how good the teaching was? Moreover, the pressure to improve aggregate results has incentivized teaching practices that prioritize test familiarity over conceptual understanding. So the pressure to raise your score, it pushes the teachers to teach in a way in which the tests would be held. Okay, so all of us have felt that in schools, basically in whichever level of education you are, teachers and institutions will only teach you in a fashion in which you are going to be tested. So the kind of questions that will be asked, so they will not focus so much on conceptual understanding and making the student better, as much as teaching in a way that will focus on just pushing your scores up. Okay, एग्जाम परफॉर्मेंस अच्छा होना चाहिए, एक्चुअल core understanding of the principle हुआ कि नहीं हुआ, they may not worry about it, they will only worry about how to make students score well in exams. Okay, so again here the author is pointing out a negative consequence of standardized testing. Long-term studies, what do long-term studies show? A heavy test-based system a long-term study on heavy test-based system, they show unclear or inconsistent result. So basically the author is saying that there is no absolute claim that these standardized tests, they work. Okay, while short-term score improvements are frequently observed, evidence of sustained academic growth remains inconsistent. In some areas, subjects not included in standardized assessments receive reduced instructional attention, thereby narrowing curricular scope. So subjects that are not tested, they often get neglected, limiting what the students are actually learning. So again, basically the author is saying the same thing, that because of these limitations, the teachers, everybody is just focused on just teaching in the manner, teaching the content which will just help the students score better in the exams. Okay, nobody really cares about whether the student is actually learning, understanding the principles. The subjects that are not tested, they get neglected. The entire focus just shifts on exam marks and how to improve it rather than quality learning. Okay. Sachin was asking, can you repeat why critical tone is not a... So skeptical tone is a doubtful tone, Sachin. Okay, we'll talk about it. So when the author is unsure, okay, he does not approve of the topic, but he's still unsure. He'll keep circling to language that is doubtful in nature. Are we sure? Is this the best possible way? Okay, that would be skeptical. And critical would be a very clear disapproving. Like in this case, you can see that the author does not approve of standardized testing methods. So he begins with the first two lines, may two, three lines, may he has told you why the standardized testing exists. But after that, if you see, the entire paragraph is only about why it does not work, what are the problems with it, what are the limitations, how our education and its system is suffering because of it. Okay, so clearly here the tone is a critical tone. Okay, the author does not agree with the topic at hand, which is standardized testing. How many of you got it correct? The tone here was critical. You can see it, right? In every sentence after the first two, three, where he has explained to you what is the theory behind having standardized testing, he goes on and on in different ways to tell you why it is not a good idea, in which all ways students are losing, and in different ways he's just critiquing it. Okay, so his tone is very, very critical. How many of you got it correct? Okay, all right, very good. So I hope thoda thoda karke you guys are beginning to get a hang of it. Okay, let's quickly move to passage 3. And I hope, Sachin, that with passage 3, this doubt that you asked would get cleared even better. You chose 1. Okay, but it was critical. Okay, so let's read the next one. Try again. It's okay. It just takes practice and we become better at it. Done, done, done. Okay. Keshav, Akarshit, done. Okay, let's see what the author here says about automated decision making. Advocates of fully automated decision making systems frequently assert that algorithmic processes can outperform human judgment by eliminating bias and inconsistency. So the author is introducing the topic that he is writing about. He is saying that supporters claim that automated systems, they make better decisions than humans because they remove any kind of personal bias and inconsistency from the decision making process. Okay. Advances in machine learning have undoubtedly enhanced predictive accuracy across domains such as logistics, finance, and medical diagnostics. So machine learning has clearly improved the prediction quality in a lot of different fields like supply chain, finance, healthcare. And because of these advances, what is the author saying? Some people argue that humans may no longer be needed for complicated decision making. Okay, so these they present as evidence that human intervention may soon become redundant. That means humans may not be needed for complicated decision making. The algorithm may be able to do it better for them. Yet the conditions under which such systems operate warrant closer scrutiny. Okay, so the situations in which these systems function, they need to be examined more thoroughly, more carefully. Many algorithms are trained on historical data sets that reflect existing institutional biases, raising concerns about the neutrality of their output. Okay, so the author here is noting that algorithms, they learn from past data. Okay, and what does past data contain? The past data contains these very same social or institutional biases that we are saying human beings have. So their result may not be as neutral. We don't know. He also doesn't know. He's just questioning that you are saying that humans are full of biases, but how are we training these algorithm? The algorithm is also being trained by past data based on human behavior only. So this past data that we are feeding to the algorithm, the data itself contains a lot of social and institutional bias. So are the results really as neutral and unbiased as we believe they are? Which is what the author is questioning. Furthermore, performance metrics commonly cited in support of automation are derived from control settings that fail to capture the unpredictability of real world scenarios. Okay, so the success that is measured, the success measures used for these systems, they usually come from artificial test environments. Okay, they are tested artificially under very controlled environments, which may not reflect of how they will perform in real world scenario when these decisions need to be taken in real world settings with so many other different variables that are so unpredictable. How are these metrics going to perform? We don't know that because they cannot be tested in, they have not been tested in such kind of settings. The adaptability of automated systems outside the predefined parameters remains an open question. So do you see the language that is being used here? The author says it's an open question. He is not saying that it is a biased, that these algorithms are biased, but he is putting a question out there that are they as neutral? He's not going and saying outright that no, they are biased, or that no, they are not unbiased. What he's saying is the manner in which he is framing his language. I want you to pay attention to the language usage here. Again and again, he is framing it in form of a question. That is it as neutral as we believe it is? Okay. Again, here he is saying it remains an open question. Okay, so it is unclear basically. The author is saying it is not clear how well the automated systems handle unexpected situations. Anything outside of the parameters that have been defined and coded into the system, if any situation arises that falls outside of those parameters, how is the system going to handle it? It's an open question. We don't know that. Nobody has the answers to those kinds of questions. Attempts to address these limitations through model refinement and ethical oversight frameworks have yielded incremental progress. Okay, so there has been some progress because of efforts like improving these models, adding some ethical rules into the coding software and stuff like that. Nevertheless, the transparency regarding algorithmic decision pathways continues to be limited even among developers. So again, he says that there have been improvements, but despite those improvements, it is still very hard to understand how algorithms reach to these decisions. Even the people who build them, it is not very clear that how these algorithms using these past data, the process that they follow to reach to these decisions. So there is no transparency. So this opacity complicates efforts to assign accountability, particularly in high stakes contexts where errors carry significant consequences. So when algorithms are unclear, it becomes difficult to decide who is responsible when something goes wrong. Okay, especially if the stakes are very high. If you are going to use an algorithm to decide whether to give a death penalty to a person, whether a person is guilty or not, the stakes are very high. Somebody's life is at stake, right? So but who is going to be held accountable? Who do we put the accountability to? We do not even know how the machine is making that kind of a complex decision. Okay, so while proponents maintain that ongoing innovation will resolve these challenges, current evidence offers an incomplete basis for such confidence. So again, here the author is again and again questioning the confidence that we can have on such algorithmic decision making. Okay, again and again you will see that the emotion that the author is feeling is he is not that confident. Again and again he is raising questions on, are we sure, how sure are we that the judgment that these algorithms and these machines are doing are neutral? We do not even know how they reach to these kinds of decisions. The data that they use has a lot of bias incorporated into it. Then how can we be so sure that the judgment that they will do would be unbiased? Okay, so do you see the manner in which again and again he's questioning something? So this is what we call being skeptical. So he's not downright rejecting the idea of using algorithmic decision making. Okay, he's not saying it's bad, that it's wrong, or that it is not the correct answer. Nowhere does he say that, nor is he saying it's a very good idea. Okay, but he is repeatedly highlighting his doubt that people believe it is very neutral, but how sure we are. He leaves a lot of open questions, a lot of unresolved open questions, which he says are still up for understanding. Okay, so I hope with this example you have finally understood what it means to take a skeptical or a doubtful tone. The author has a very doubtful stance on algorithmic decision making in this passage, and that is also the answer to the question. Okay, automated decision making, the answer is 2. The author is skeptical. How many of you got it correct? Did you all get it correct, or was it not that clear? I think some of you may have felt he is being critical because he is not being supportive. I think some people may confuse it to being critical. Sachin chose skeptical this time. Okay. Oh, all right. So a lot of you got it correct. Great. I'm happy to see that you are getting the hang of it. Okay. So with that, let's go to the next passage. Try do this one quickly. Increase your speed. This is the last one for today. Or maybe we can try squeeze one more. I'm not sure. We'll see how quickly we are able to finish this. Can you elaborate a bit about critical and skeptical? All right. After this question, we'll talk a little bit. Yes, yes. We'll talk a little bit more on that. Done? Okay, let's wait for others also. So another term for advocatory is also sometimes that is used is also persuasive. Okay, when the author is trying to persuade you. All right, so let's see what the author talks about early childhood education. Okay, public investment in early childhood education has increasingly been linked to long-term social and economic benefits. So what is the author saying? That government spending money on early childhood education is widely associated with positive long-term outcomes for society and economy in general. Okay, so the author is beginning with a very strong positive opinion about investing in early childhood education. What does he say? Research across developmental psychology and economics suggests that cognitive and behavioral foundations established during early years exert a lasting influence on educational attainment, workforce participation, and health outcomes. So what is the author saying here? That studies show that skills and behavior formed early in life, early during childhood, they affect education, employment, and health much, much, much later on. Okay, so cross-disciplinary evidence in support of early education. Because of this research, policymakers are focusing more on making preschool widely available. So unlike later stage interventions, early education programs demonstrate relatively high returns on investment. So compared to programs introduced later in life, early education gives more benefit for the amount of money that is spent on it. Longitudinal studies tracking participants over several decades reveal reduced reliance on social welfare systems and improved parental engagement. So do you see what is happening here? The author begins with praising early childhood education, and he goes on and on and on, just telling you the various advantages that investing in good early childhood education brings to you. Okay, so what the government is doing, why it's making preschool more widely available, what are the short-term studies show, what do the long-term longitudinal studies show, in every possible way, har taraf se ghoom fir ke, how and why early childhood education, focusing on it, and prioritizing it is good for people, the author is trying to highlight. So clearly here the author is being very persuasive, he is being advocatory, yes. So he is being supportive of the idea of early childhood education, and it's very evident that he feels very strongly positively towards the topic. Okay, so I think all of you got that quickly. So with this, I think we will not do any more passages, but what I would want to do is answer some of the questions that you guys are having, some of the any more doubts that still remain. So I think someone was asking the difference again, to talk a little bit more about the difference between critical and skeptical tone, right? So I'll repeat that again. Critical is where the author clearly disapproves of the topic at hand. Okay, so what the author is basically, through whatever language he's using, whatever words and phrases, vocabulary that the author will be using, you will see what the author is trying to tell you is, this is not good. Okay, he does not approve of it. These are the limitations. The limitations will be highlighted, weaknesses of the topic will be highlighted, the kind of adjectives or phrases that are used to describe the process or the policy or the topic at hand are all negative. Okay, very clearly, decisively not good and negative. That is critical. Okay, however, in skeptical or doubtful, you will not see that level of clear, confident disapproval. You will see subtle questioning. Okay, you will see the author will highlight some kind of flaw in the topic or the way in which the process is held, and he will leave an open question that I am not very confident that this is a good idea. The way you saw in that passage on automated decision making. Okay, nowhere in that passage the author said that it is not a good idea, or that it should not be done, or that it is bad, but he kept on raising doubt about, is it as good as people say it is? Okay, that level of confidence is what makes the difference between the tone either being critical or it being doubtful. When you feel the author clearly does not like something decisively, there is no doubt that he disapproves of it. It is a critical RC, following a critical tone. But if that certainty is not there, if you see that the author is unsure, okay, there is a certain degree of uncertainty that is put into his vocabulary, then it moves to the zone of being doubtful or skeptical. Okay, that he is not very sure about this topic. Okay, so there's a lot of things that still need to be clarified, and that is the distinction. The more number of RCs you do, the more better you'll become at it. Okay, if you have more passages, please share for practice. I will do that. Okay, and in any case, a lot of RCs and a lot of content will be shared with you guys. This is just one part. Okay, now as we move ahead through our VARC practice, through our next classes, and when you are practicing by yourself at home, this becomes part of every single, so we're going to keep adding on to it. Okay, so for example, when we study about how to identify the main idea of the passage, okay, it doesn't mean that when you are reading, maybe in the class we are going to focus only on practicing how to identify the main idea of the passage, but what you need to do is, once you read the passage, you will automatically first understand what kind of passage it is. Is it a persuasive? It is a neutral passage? It's a skeptical passage? What kind of passage? What kind of tone it is? And then move on to the other aspect. For example, what is the central idea of the passage? What were the emotions? What was the main goal of writing the passage? And all of that. Okay. So whatever RC you do now, remember, this should become the basis of it. Do not move ahead to answer any question unless you first ask yourself, practice that way. Okay, first ask yourself, okay, what kind of passage it is that I'm reading. Okay, is it a scientific passage? Is it a descriptive passage? Is it a persuasive passage? What kind of tone it is? Is it a skeptical tone? Is it a critical tone? Is it a neutral tone? Ask yourself, irrespective of the question that you are solving. These are some of the basics that you should absolutely get. Okay, and you will yourself realize how answering many other questions, even if this is not the core question that is being asked, a good understanding of this will help you answer those subjective questions later on accurately. Okay, so these are all, you do not have to, these are not some special paragraphs that you have to get from anywhere, Sachin. Just pick up any RC, any material. If you're doing a lot of reading, if you're reading Eon essays, or if you're reading, I would suggest read a lot of online magazines. Okay, depending upon whatever is your area of interest, start from there. But my suggestion would be, diversify the genres that you read. And the best way to read is, if you love reading about sports, first start reading the magazines on sports. If you love reading on philosophy and psychology, pick up, if you love reading on I don't know, animals or geology, read on that. Okay, so begin with the genre and the topic and the areas that you love, and then slowly start experimenting reading on others. And whenever you're reading an article, whenever you're reading any passage, any kind of material that you're reading, ask yourself, what is the author's main idea behind writing this? Okay, is he just being neutral and informing me about this issue, or is he being persuasive? Does he feel positive? Is he being critical? Practice by understanding. Every single time you read a piece, ask yourself, what was the tone that the author was using? Okay, so another question to ask, another way to ask yourself would be, why did the author write this piece? Was this piece written just to inform the readers about a certain topic? Or was this piece written because the author felt very strongly, positively or negatively about it, and he wanted to persuade us about it, or some other reason? Okay, so there is a lot of reading material out there. You can pick up all the RCs from the past CAT papers. But every single time when you are reading anything, my suggestion is, begin with asking yourself this basic question: what was the tone that the author, what was the based on the vocabulary and the language the author has used, what was the tone of the material? Okay, so with that, I think if you have any more questions, the WhatsApp link is right there. You can post your questions on that. Join the WhatsApp group, post your questions. They are all immediately answered. If you need any other help, any other materials, any other doubts that you have while solving, please feel free to post those doubts. There are so many forums on which you can post. We'll try to answer them as quickly as possible. Okay, so with that, I think I am going to say good night to all of you today. Thank you so much for joining the class today, and I will see you in the next class. Bye-bye. Good night.